Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. Today we're going to give a look to the Ensis. Now the Ensis is first of all a beautiful sword and there is no doubt on this in my opinion. Now I consider this trainer a weapon which is good for a strong fencer. So someone which has already built some proper strength in the arms and core, because it requires strength to be handled properly and handled with proper control, because this sword tries to replicate, in my opinion, as much as possible a real weapon. So a tool which is meant to damage the opponent when you are striking with this kind of sword, which of course has pros and cons. Now on one side you have the most realistic blunt trainer possible in terms of handling qualities of a weapon which is actually meant to cut down an opponent. The balance of this weapon is, of this tool, is relatively forward compared to other trainers. It's around 10 to 11 centimeters, 12 maybe, which means that the weight of the weapon is forward. Now the weapon is not heavy per se, so if you keep it in this way, it's actually relatively good as a weight, so it's an average weight for a sword. But of course this point of balance, which is forward, makes it move around slightly more slowly compared to other weapons. So at first glance, when you start using this, it feels slower compared to the average feather that you may find around. And you have actually to deal with this. You can't force a specific kind of fencing which doesn't fit this weapon on this weapon. You have to adapt to this kind of qualities of this tool. Now this is actually the first thing that one person which tries the sword for the first time in sparring feel. Just hear my students, some of them, after trying out this sword for the first time in sparring.
It's a very heavy sword, but it's certainly well built, and it's easy to swing and easy to control the opponent's sword with. So I think it's good, but it's not my style of sword. I prefer longer and lighter swords, so it's not my style, but I can see someone swinging this and having a lot of success with it.
As my friend said, it's very heavy, but I find it very useful for swinging and for blocking opponents, because the heavy weight is very useful in those occasions. Can be difficult to control, but if you let the swing go and the sword do its thing, it's very practical, and I can see it used in many ambients and for many different opponents.
Secondo me è una bellissima spada, sembra la spada di uno strigo, è quella dei libri di Geralt di Rivia, tipo come lunghezza, però è un po' pesantina per noi italiani, che forse siamo più piccoli di voi polacchi. Per il resto è molto figa.
Now on the other hand, this tool, for the same motivation of course, has a lot of other pros. Now when you strike a blow, you have a lot of advantage on the crossing. It is very good at parrying, especially if you are on time, because you sometimes, if you parry in the same way as you are used to do with other weapons, you may be a little late, so you have to adapt to the way in which you parry. It is better to parry in a way which is more cut-oriented, so it is better to countercut on top of the opponent's sword compared to go for static blocks. So if you are right on your parry motions and you are in time, this sword is great at parrying, because the mass of the weapon and its balance help you parrying the opponent's sword in a, I would say, very good way. Plus, of course, for the same motivation, every kind of binding action feels easier. If you thrust into the bind generally speaking, you are the one which wins the bind, even if you are not landing the action at the proper degrees of strength of the sword, etc., simply because of the same motivation. Unless you do something very stupid, which is indeed possible, and I do it too from time to time. But on average, every time you end up thrusting against an opponent and you place the weapon more or less at the right place, it doesn't have to be at the right place, you just take the space for yourself. Now, because of how this weapon works, you have to make the weapon rotate a lot. This weapon needs rotation, not broken lines. You can't just stop and start this weapon a lot. This weapon needs to rotate around a lot, actually, to work properly. So again, you have to adapt to this kind of sword. These are the main things that you have to know when you want to use this sword in sparring. In terms of handling qualities. Now let's touch safety as the second aspect. Safety is very good on thrusting, even compared the type of blade that you have. So I was expecting a not really good blade in terms of flexing. So it is pretty safe on thrusting, especially on the length of the sword, because it is 125 centimeters, if I remember well, or more or less. So it is relatively short compared to other swords. Now the tip is thicker, so it's fine, I will say, in terms of safety, but because of the shape of the blade, I will add something on top of it anyway. It is always better. Now let's talk about striking, cutting instead. Now in these regards, there is lesser safety for a simple motivation. This sword is very good at parrying, striking on top of the opponent's blade, beating it aside, taking the line with a thrust in opposition, even if not placed very well, as I mentioned. All these qualities transfers into striking your opponent. Now, it is relatively easier compared to other swords to hurt your opponent while using this weapon on cutting motions. It requires control. Take this in great consideration. This sword is safer on thrusting than on cutting, and it requires you a proper level of fitness and strength to be used. If you have the kind of qualities required, in my opinion, it's a very interesting tool to use, because it makes you move in a way which is different compared to other swords. So again, as I said, it is more rational with this sword to parry with cuts compared to pairing with, let's say, static parries. And it is, let's say, the first sword which I use that it's not that I want to do this kind of thing, but it is the sword that asks for it, which is something interesting, because technique is based on the qualities of the sword you are using, and because the qualities of this sword are certain kind of qualities, it is rational to do certain movements compared to others. It feels the right thing to do, and it actually trains you in that kind of direction simply because it feels rational to go for it. It just feels natural. So, to wrap the video up, I will say, very cool sword. It costs a lot, so it is something that you have to consider. And it is also a specialist kind of weapon. It has also this kind of very cool pros that I don't know if you can hear it, but because of how it is shaped, if you cut in the proper line, it just goes swoosh, and you feel that the cut is correct, even with small motions. It's cool. It moves very well. It requires you to move in a different way compared to other weapons around. It's peculiar also because of the balance, which is more similar to certain sharp swords which you may find around. It is shorter, so I am biased also on this because on average, if possible, I prefer shorter sword. And yeah, so that's everything I have to say on top of this sword. Consider buying it if you are already, first of all, if it is not your first sword. This is not a sword for a beginner at all, absolutely not. It is a sword even, let's say, it is a sword for an experienced fencer which wants something which behave basically exactly as something that is meant to break the head of one person in half with a strike. Because of this same motivation, it is very satisfying to use and more risky on average than other weapons. Once you take this in consideration, you have everything you need to know to decide if you want to go for this sword or not. I think that all in all, it's a very interesting weapon to have if you have the money to spend for it. I consider myself lucky to have received it. If you want to know, I received it for free, if you think that it may bias me or not, so take this in consideration. I try to be as honest as possible actually. But yeah, I think it's a cool sword and you can understand why. By the way, I received it with this rubber shaft, let's say, that is, it is very convenient. You can actually put oil into it and it preserves your blade from rusting. Now, I don't know if I've been lucky and I received it with it for some kind of motivation, but considering that it seems made for this sword specifically, I suspect that it comes together with the sword. I didn't ask for it, but I suspect it is the case. And honestly, it's a very good and interesting addition, especially if you care a lot for your trainers and you hate seeing rust over it. Very good, people. I hope you will find this video useful in some ways. Thanks for watching as always. Remember to check my Patreon link in the description if you want to support me and the channel. And as always, see you next time.